Last time we talked about casting or restoring in the first part of this verse, Psalm 23:3a. And today we're going to look at the first half of the last half of this verse. First half of the last half of this verse.
Have you noticed my Sunday school class, have you checked how we're doing it? I've got them separated into A and B, like almost all the verses.
Oh, really?
A and B, so the kids don't have to do
The full thing at once?
Although Claudia, did do it when she was 10. Like,
Yeah,
she knows it all.
some of the verses are pretty long.
I was 6. Oh, excuse me.
Not that these verses are long that we're doing, but there's just a lot inside each, and so it's like I needed to split this lesson. I didn't really think I should squeeze it all into, and I didn't realize how long last week's lesson was till I got home and saw the video and go, oh wow, wasn't that we not only started late last week, it was a long lesson too. So yeah, but hopefully this week won't be quite that long. We'll see. So anyway, we're covering He leads me in the paths. So we're only covering He leads me. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. But we're just doing the first 3 words. So when you read the 23rd Psalm, you'll notice, if you read it through and pay attention, that there's a journey taking place in it. They start out in green pastures and they continue along paths. They go through a valley, through a dark canyon, and then they come to the tablelands, which is like the high mountains, like a plateau maybe, or a valley up at the top of the mountains. And then they end up, the journey ends in the house of the Lord. So there's a journey taking place all the way through the 23rd Psalm. So the Good Shepherd is leading his sheep, or us, on a journey through various stages of life. There's double, triple, quadruple meanings in some of these verses. And we'll talk more about that next week, I think it is. So one part of the meaning of the psalm is the journey of life that we all go through, the stages of life we go through. Everybody got it? Okay, so see, this is a map of Israel, and that red line is just one of the paths that went for miles, obviously, for the journey for the shepherd with his sheep during the seasons. And David, who wrote this, he was a shepherd, but he descended from a long line of shepherds. He came from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses. All of them were shepherds. And no doubt, many of them followed the same path with their sheep. They traveled for miles with their sheep to feed and water them. So it's a journey, a physical journey, but it's also a spiritual journey in life. So I think it's pretty cool. Can you imagine living somewhere where your family line kept the business going and they kept following the same path all those years? I think that's pretty cool. Doesn't happen too much these days, does it? So spring, they would start out in Bethlehem in the southern regions of Israel. So that's the star on the map that you see. That's Bethlehem, southern Israel. And so that's where we start in Psalm 23:2. Green pastures, provision of life, because there are a lot of green pasture lands down by Bethlehem. That was a main sheep raising place for Jerusalem for the sacrifices as years went on. So they would graze their sheep down there. That's where they'd start in the spring. Well, okay, so what happens next? The summer, they had to take off out of Bethlehem because the temperature's picking up, grasses are drying out, time to move to cooler areas. So they start heading north up the path. So that's Psalm 23:3. He leads me on paths of righteousness through life, right? And then, so then as the summer came along, they keep heading further north, looking for cooler lands, more green grass, and even they pass by the river as they go at one section. So it gives them the water during the heat of the summer. So as they approach fall, they're in like the dark canyons. They're passing through those canyons, and we'll talk about that next week, that section, I believe. Or maybe it's a couple weeks from now, about the canyon part of their life. And so that's Psalm 23:4. They enter the valley of the shadow of death. And then, so they eventually, after they get through the canyons, they reach the highlands, the tablelands at the top, where it's much cooler at the end of summer. They're up there at the top, and they're there during the fall. But as winter starts to approach, guess what they do? They turn all those sheep around and head back to Bethlehem. They take the journey back. And they go back because there's shelter in Bethlehem. They've got, caves and pens and places to put the sheep to shelter them in the winter. So it's a whole system they had worked out that they know how to feed the sheep and care for them all through the whole year. They don't just stay in one place. Movement is very important with sheep. Even if you're in a general area, you don't have to travel that far. They still move the sheep all the time. So the last verse is Psalm 23:6, dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's talking about eternity forward in their journey of life. We all will get there where there's eternity forward. And the choice is, are you going to do eternity forward with God or eternity forward without God? Not a good situation to choose that. So anyway, this whole psalm, it speaks to the shepherd's life as well as our physical and spiritual life journey. So that's like 3 layers of meaning right there just in this psalm. And it's a very beautiful psalm when you start thinking about what is included in it. But before this psalm, I had never thought much about the movement of sheep. You just think about them being on a ranch somewhere with grass. Maybe they might switch fields, maybe, because we used to move our cattle from field to field. We'd open the gates and say, okay, go graze in this field for a while and then bring them back to the other one. Or maybe we were irrigating and we needed to move them. So I've seen some limited movement, but this, they really journeyed. And they had those same patterns here. Even in America, they journeyed with their sheep. They went on a path, a seasonal path with them here as well to feed them and water them. So it's not just a Middle Eastern thing or an Israel thing. It's a system for sheep. So Robert Morgan, he stated that there were long parades of flocks that clogged the roadways. What?
It's cute.
What?
You like those, right? No bugs on them.
See, we could make these in Sunday school.
Little cotton balls.
Little cotton balls. But they used to, it's funny how I put this, long parades of flocks clogged the roadways of ancient worlds like tons of dirty cotton balls. Isn't that funny? It was a big industry here and there. But interesting, I didn't know this before I'd done this study before, that the Roman armies, they traveled with their own sheep and shepherds and shearers and cooks. And you had to think about it, they had to have a way to eat and a way to clothe themselves, so they took them with them. So the sheep would follow along with the, okay? Good water. So they would use the sheep for wool while they're traveling, because they had to shear them depending on how long the armies were gone.
Well,
So that, what?
I just realized that was a good, was it a video that Linda sent?
Oh, the shearing of,
the shearing?
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, she found that. It was, yeah. Poor little lost sheep. That's why you don't want to be a lost sheep.
Like that.
But that's interesting. Think about it. There are no stores. They couldn't just stop whatever nation they were going to go conquer. They had to take their food with them, and they would butcher sheep. They'd use them for the wool. They traveled with the sheep.
I would think the wool would give them something to barter with.
Maybe that too when they did get someplace. But do you think the Romans really bartered that much? Probably not.
Well, what I'm thinking is, if you're to use the wool, you have to spin it and weave it and all that stuff. So
Right.
I'm thinking that would be a barter to.
Right. If they needed to, I'm sure, yeah. But they aren't the only ones that did it. The Jesuit missionaries did it when they traveled. They used to travel from place to place, and there were other groups that did the same thing. I never thought about a flock following behind an army before.
Oh, wow.
Look at this guy.
You.
But you don't think about it much. You kind of think of maybe sheep herders as mild-mannered guys, maybe out in the fields with their flocks. They're simple-minded, you might think, because they're uneducated or something. But really, they had to be leaders by profession. They were actually pretty with it because they had to have a lot of knowledge. They had to know how to take care of the flocks, number one. They had to know how to take care of the pastures, and they had to know where everything was at. They had to be good with their geography. Where am I going to get the water? Where is the pasture? What's the temperatures like? They had a lot of knowledge in their heads, and they had to lead their flocks successfully to the right places, or their flocks would not survive. It could take a day of being off track, and you could make your sheep sick, or you could cause some of their deaths because you're not getting them to where they need to be. So they had to be really attentive and really knowledgeable and do a good job leading. You know, I never would really think about shepherds that way, but they really had to be on top of things, because it would just lead to the wrong thing if they navigated the wrong way with their sheep. They needed to know.
Now, what is the black sheep for? Next one doesn't have one, but I noticed in flocks there's usually one black sheep. Is there? What's it do?
For every 100 sheep.
For every 100 sheep it counts them. Oh, I did not know that.
For every 100.
Did not know that.
Hmm.
You ever noticed the black one in the
Why
flock?
did you
Yeah.
do that?
I did not know that.
FFA, I guess, probably in high
Yeah.
school.
Sweet.
Mr. Crawford.
We all learned something.
One of them told us that, and
Oh.
it stuck with me.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
one black one in
So
the
black
flock.
sheep can serve a purpose. We're not just supposed to be ousted, right?
Right,
That's right. Every
Every-
100 sheep. Now we know.
Every.
I need to tell my family that. I am good for something. Just because I'm the black sheep, I'm okay.
You're a
Don't kick me out of
I
this
didn't
party.
think of that. That didn't even come to my mind. I'd be the black sheep of the family.
Huh?
You can't.
I count.
You count.
I'm important. I am the black sheep of the family.
You have a-
There is no one like me.
relatives.
There's 100 relatives. It's,
Yeah, right. Okay, so our good shepherd knows the path we are to be on to give us our best life and keep us from perishing. So, you know, like we've talked about before, sheep aren't too smart necessarily. And if they're left to themselves with no shepherd guiding them, they're going to do one of two things. The sheep are creatures of habit. Are we? Mm-hmm.
Could be.
And they will literally walk the same path over and over again. Look at this field.
Right. Wow.
Look at the rut they've dug, because that's the only path they'll walk. And they'll just keep following each other down the same path. So they get stuck in a rut. You know, they're creatures of habit, not a good thing. And if they stay in one area too long because nobody's leading them to a new pasture, they'll eat down the grass to nothing. And they'll ruin the soil. They'll get disease and bugs, I'm sorry to say, because they will leave behind their droppings and stay there in the middle of it, besides killing all the grass. So it becomes a very unhealthy situation because of their habits of staying in one spot or following the same path to the same spot. They cause themselves damage and harm. So that's why it's important to have a good shepherd leading them to get them out of that mess that they'll make for themselves.
That's why they had those cattle wars, cattle against sheep.
Oh yeah,
Those cattlemen said, no, they ruined the whole place.
they ruin it because they eat a lot and they,
And then, you know.
yeah, they ruin it. So there were a lot of wars. But the other problem they have is because they're not so smart, they have a tendency to get lost. And they get separated easily, or they just get off track. So they need someone to be on top of them all the time, leading them to be where they need to be, keeping them out of trouble, keeping them from getting lost. If you leave a gate open by accident, guess what's going to happen? Crazy sheep are going to wander off and get in trouble. They're very much like us. We do the same thing. That's why God gives us boundaries. He puts gates to close around us, not to keep us in and punish us, but to protect us, to keep us safe and keep us on track. And that's why he's leading us, to keep us on track. So we too are creatures of habit and easily get lost like the sheep. We need our good shepherd to lead us and to the next pasture in our lives. You may not think you need to move on, but you might need to move on. And he knows when it's time for you to move on to your next pasture.
But you always pray against it.
I know, well, you know,
Change is hard.
yeah. Maybe if our next pasture is all of us going to Tahiti for a few weeks. Maybe that, I think that's important. They need to get saved in Tahiti, right?
Really.
Yeah. So, our good shepherd's leadership can be trusted. Knowing this will make it easier to follow him on our journey through life. That's where we fall short. It's like we don't trust him. You know, he'll tell us to do something or to move on. Maybe you're supposed to quit a job. Maybe you're supposed to change a job. Maybe you're supposed to not marry that person you thought you were going to marry, or whatever he's telling us to do. So we have a lot of hard time trusting him. We think we can make the better decision. But if we know that we can trust him because he is a good shepherd, it makes it a lot easier to follow him to wherever he's leading us to, whatever pasture. So there's some good verses listed here for your homework, if you get time, to look up that have to do with trusting the Lord and him leading us. Okay, we're only going to look at a couple of them, and we'll look at the last two. Isaiah 48, I'm on page, turn. Isaiah 48:17. Thus says the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. I am the Lord your God, who teaches you to profit, who leads you by the way you should go. And then Isaiah 58:11 we did last week, but it's one of my favorite verses. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in drought and strengthen your bones. You shall be like a watered garden and like a spring of water. These waters do not fail. I just love that verse because of the way he provides for us and guides us to where we need to go, and he'll satisfy us, help us through it. So, did you know that whenever a shepherd opens the gate into a new pasture, the sheep get filled with excitement? Sheep get all worked up and happy about getting to move on.
Look at them jumping around there.
Even the old ewes will kick up their heels. We talked about this before.
I are one.
And
So cute.
isn't that cute, that little baby one? And then there's a ewe jumping. But they get excited to move on and experience new, because you know why? There's a nice new green grass, unpolluted and untrampled on, some cool spots to lay. So like the sheep, we should be excited wherever the Lord is leading us. But we get sometimes filled with trepidation and fear and worry because, I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know if I should go to that new job. I don't know if I should talk to that new person. You know, whatever the new pasture is he's leading you into, it can be a little scary, but if we're trusting him, we need to be excited because it means there's something special, something he's doing with the new move where he's moving us to. So we unfortunately though get stuck in our ruts like the sheep. We dig our own ruts, get comfortable where we're at. We don't want to move on to where he's told us to move on to, unless we're just feeling like running astray like we do sometimes, which is not a good way to leave. So Isaiah 53:6 says, all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. See, we're not good left to ourselves. We need to trust the Lord and follow him so we don't get into trouble. Don't get into mischief. We don't sin. We're following him and obeying him. But thank goodness he took our sins for us, right? He helped us through all that. We may insist on knowing what's best for us. I know I never do that. But, you know, we don't know what's going on ahead of us. We don't know the full picture. We don't really know what's best. Only he could, because he knows everything. So why don't we trust him more when he's asking us, you know, to do something, when he's leading us someplace? We should be trusting him to where he's sending us. So Proverbs 14:12, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. We think we know what's best, but it could be getting us into some serious trouble, right? Proverbs 16:25, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. So don't be thinking you got the best answer. Following our good shepherd isn't always easy, but we need to believe that our life is in God's hands. He's holding us, he's guiding us, he's providing for us, he's protecting us. If we would just focus in on our good shepherd, it would make things easier for us. Those big decisions wouldn't be so bad. So that way we can more easily accept whatever good or bad comes our way as part of God's plan. Sometimes there might be bad on the path, and we're gonna see that when we get further into this study. But you know, if it's all part of God's plan and he's leading us through those situations, we do not need to fear. He's with us and he'll take care of us. So what did Jesus tell us about following him? Do you remember? What did he want us to do? You know?
Follow him.
Very good, Debbie. Good.
Take up our cross.
Take up our cross. So Mark 8:34. Oh wait, I didn't change the verse.
Uh-oh.
Obviously something went wrong. Well, okay, it's take up your cross, deny yourself, and follow him, right? Ignore the verse on the screen.
Which way?
I don't know why that happened, but anyway, he's told us that following him means we have to deny ourselves. It's not going to be easy the whole time. He may tell us which way to go. He may put us on the right path. He may give us what we need, but it may be difficult. It may mean we have to deny ourselves some things. So we must deny ourselves to follow our good shepherd.
So where's the one with the take up your cross?
That's Mark 8:34, but the words aren't those words.
Well, that's-
I've got-
Disregard.
Disregard the words. The verse is right.
I think
your other
I think
verse
you
was-
said that verse 3
Yeah.
times in a row.
You did.
That's what I'm saying. It was supposed to be,
It was on 3 though.
yeah,
It was on 3 even though the
The 2
address
proverbs
is
you
different.
had said.
yeah. It's supposed to be.
16.
Anyway, it's supposed to have been that one. Take up your cross. Deny
That's
yourself.
not Take up a cross.
No, I'm just saying. But
Oh, I see.
Mark 8:34 is the right reference.
That's what I wrote.
Wrong verse on the screen. Sorry about that. So, we must deny ourselves to follow our good shepherd. So, Philip Keller, he had put in his book, he called them 7 fresh attitudes that we need to acquire to be able to deny ourselves and follow Christ. So these are what he talked about. So instead of loving myself most, I will be willing to love Christ best and others more than myself. That's how you deny yourself, one step, one way. 2, instead of being one of the crowd, I'm willing to be singled out, set apart from the gang. Denying yourself means you may not always fit in. You may not always be accepted. That's part of denying yourself and following him. 3, instead of insisting on my own rights, I'm willing to forego them in favor of others. So if you're still saying, I want to sit on that pew, get out, you know, obviously you're not denying yourself and you're not giving up your rights, right? So give up that pew. Number 4, instead of being boss, I don't know anybody in this room like this, I am willing to be at the bottom of the heap, right? You can't always be in charge.
I wasn't willing, I just couldn't move quick enough to get out of the way.
But I thought it was interesting. A hallmark of a serene soul is the absence of drive, at least drive for self-determination. In other words, you have to have some drive for life, but it's not drive to do everything for self. Your drive is different. You'll be at peace if you're not being the boss all the time. It's a hard one for some of us. And these lessons, I don't know. I think I need to stop teaching. So instead of finding fault with life and always asking why, I'm willing to accept every circumstance of life in an attitude of gratitude. In other words, denying self means when something goes wrong or amok, you can't look for someone else to blame. You can't forget what blessings you have. You need to realize that God has allowed whatever He's allowed in your life for a reason, and be glad that He's with you and He's going to get you through it. Have an attitude of gratitude. That's part of denying self when it comes to the bad times. Because a lot of times when we get the bad times, we say, well, why? Why? I don't deserve this. I'm a good Christian, or whatever you might say to yourself. Why does that bad person get the good things? You know, we need to accept what God allows in our life, deny what we think we want or deserve, and move on and just be have gratitude to God for what He is doing in your life.
I think a lot of times too, if we do that, eventually we do see why.
Yes.
You know, we can look back and go, oh, that's why.
Yeah, there's a delay. You don't always see it till later. It's so nice when He does open our eyes to see what it was He was doing, what He allowed in our lives for what reason. Sometimes it can be years.
Expectation that sabotages that.
Pardon?
Expectation kind of sabotages that.
Yes, yeah,
It does to me all the time.
yeah. Yeah, because you expect something. If you don't get it, that's where you got to deny yourself. Okay, I wasn't meant to have that, or it wasn't meant to go that way. It's a hard one. Hey, look, I think there's a number missing. Instead of exercising and asserting my will, I am willing to learn to cooperate with his wishes and comply with his will. We too much what we want all the time, but we just need to learn to cooperate. That's how you deny yourself. Okay, I'm going to do what you say, God. I'm going to do what you say. I wonder where my number 5 went.
You did. We
Number
five.
But it's not on the screen.
Yeah, you said
We
it
all
was
time
there.
How did you do it? Did you memorize it?
Oh, maybe.
It was there.
No, see, look. Oh, it's numbered wrong.
Yeah.
There you go.
We didn't even
Number
notice.
4-2 is number 5.
Shouldn't
Is
have
that
said
confusing?
anything, we wouldn't have noticed.
Obviously, I was not having a good day. Why, God? Why? Obviously, this lesson hasn't kicked in yet. Okay, so number 7, instead of choosing my own way, poor Frank, I am willing to choose to follow in Christ's way, simply to do what he asked me to do. That's how you deny yourself. You can't have your own way all the time. He wants you to do things his way. So Frank Sinatra was quite wrong. You didn't get my reference? Now some of these are going to be challenging, right? But God can help you with these attitudes and help you with learning to deny yourself. It is really rough. Obviously, I've failed on many of these already tonight even. So you want to try to make the adjustments to your attitudes. You don't want him to give you an attitude adjustment, right? Nobody wants God to give them an attitude adjustment. That could be pretty bad. So next week, we're going to talk about how God leads us, the other half of the verse, and where he leads us and the end results of it. So we'll make it through the last, 5 words, whatever's left of it, okay? 4 words left? Okay. It just was too much to crush into one lesson. I thought I needed to keep it split. So it's enough for me. It's enough conviction in one lesson. All right. Well, thank you very much.